My name is Denise Jackson. I'm 32 years old, and last Thanksgiving, my younger sister walked into my parents' dining room, wearing my engagement ring, not a similar ring, mine. The center stone was larger, but the tiny side diamonds I chose on Selwyn Avenue were still there. She grabbed my ex-fiancé's hand and said, "We're in love." My mother kissed him like he was already her son, filled his glass, and Brandon looked right at me and said, "Denise, you always said you'd do anything for this family." 14 relatives stopped chewing. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I went home, locked my door, and at 11:52 p.m. ordered 3 DNA kits. Not because my sister was sleeping with my ex, because one sentence at that table made something click. If I was right, they had no idea the truth inside those results would destroy 2 families, not one. I arrived at the house on Providence Road at 6 o'clock sharp. I brought the pecan pie my grandmother taught me to bake when I was 9. I wore the blue dress my mother once told me made me look too serious for my own good. The porch light was on. The wreath was crooked. I remember that crooked wreath because my mother is not a woman who permits crooked things. If the wreath was off by 3 degrees, it was because somebody had been in and out of that front door all afternoon, and my mother had stopped caring about the wreath. Through the bay window, I could already see the dining table, and that was the first thing that didn't add up. There were 8 plates, not 7. My mother had set for 1 extra guest without telling me. I stood on the porch for 4 seconds longer than I needed to. I counted the plates twice. 8. I rang the bell. She met me in the foyer with a kiss on the cheek that landed too high and too fast. "Put the pie on the sideboard, sweetheart. I want it to look nice tonight." Nice. She had used that word 3 times in the 2 texts she'd sent me that week. I thought she was talking about the pie. I was wrong. The house smelled like sage and brown butter and the particular kind of candle my mother only burns when she wants a room to feel like a magazine. The foyer rug had been vacuumed in one direction, the way she vacuums when she's expecting a photograph to happen. I hung my coat on the brass hook. I set the pie where she told me to set it. My father was in his recliner pretending to watch football. The volume was down too low for a man who actually watches football. He stood up when I walked in, held my shoulders for a second too long, and said, "Hi, Dee," the way a man says goodbye. I didn't register it yet. I filed it away. "Dad, you okay?" "I'm fine, honey. You look pretty." He never said pretty. He said nice, or he said sharp, or he said, "That color is a good one on you." Pretty was a word for strangers. He looked past me when he said it, and for 1/2 second, his eyes went to the staircase, as if he were checking that nobody was coming down. The Bordeaux was already open. My mother only opens that bottle for weddings, funerals, and the Easter she wants her sister to fly in for. It had been breathing for 2 hours. I remember because she told me, unprompted, twice, that it had been breathing since 4. The longer she explained, the less I believed her. My Aunt Evelyn was in the kitchen. She is my father's younger sister, 61, divorced twice, and the only person in my family who ever asked me follow-up questions. When I walked in, she was holding the turkey thermometer and she didn't look up right away. When she finally did, she held my eyes for a full second longer than anyone else had, and gave me a look I have never, in my life, seen on her face. A small, almost invisible shake of the head. Not the kind you give a child reaching for a hot pan. The kind you give someone who's about to step off a curb into traffic. I said, "What?" She said, "Nothing. The turkey is done." She turned back to the oven. Her shoulders were too tight. I should have pressed. I didn't. I thought whatever was wrong could wait until after pie. At 6:47, the doorbell rang. The thing I remember most about that moment is not the door opening. It is my mother. She stood up too fast. Her knees hit the underside of the table, hard enough that the Bordeaux rippled. She did not apologize. She did not rub her leg. She crossed the dining room the way a woman crosses a room when she's been rehearsing the walk for weeks. Finally, she said, under her breath, to no one. Chloe came in first. She was wearing a cranberry-colored dress that I recognized from a photograph on Brandon's phone 2 years ago, back when I was the woman next to him. The photograph had been taken at his cousin's wedding in Asheville. I had not been invited to that wedding. I had asked Brandon who the woman in the background was, and he had said, just somebody's girlfriend. The girlfriend had been wearing that dress. Now my sister was wearing that dress. On her left hand was a ring I had returned in April. Inside a velvet box. Inside a padded envelope. Inside a manila file marked, "Do not reopen." The center stone had been swapped out. A bigger one, colder, badly set. The little satellite diamonds I had picked myself at the jeweler on Selwyn Avenue were still there. She did not meet my eyes. Brandon came in behind her. He was wearing the gray cardigan I used to wash every Sunday because he sweated in wool. His mouth moved like it was trying to find a shape for a word that didn't exist. He was thinner. His jaw had the hollow that comes from skipping meals for months. He did not look like a man in love. He looked like a man in a hostage photo. Chloe spoke to the room and not to me. "Mom, Dad, everyone, we wanted to tell you all at once. Brandon and I are in love." There should have been a pause. There wasn't. My mother was already moving. She went to the sideboard, lifted the 8th plate, the plate I had counted through the window, and set it down beside Chloe. The plate was warm. I saw the heat lift off it. She had taken it out of the warming drawer just before the doorbell. That plate had been ready for him before anyone pretended to be surprised. "Sit down, sweetheart," my mother said. "You're home?" Nobody spoke for perhaps 4 seconds. Nobody asked if I was okay. My father looked at his hands. Aunt Evelyn looked at the turkey. My cousin Hannah reached for her wine and knocked her fork off the table. She bent to pick it up and took longer than she needed to. The only sound was Chloe's chair sliding out on the hardwood. I did something I am still proud of. I did not cry. I did not leave. I picked up my fork and I asked my mother, in a voice I didn't recognize, if she needed help with the gravy. She said, "No, sweetheart. Everything is already taken care of." That was the second sentence that night that told me the truth. Everything was already taken care of. Not now, before. Before I walked in. Before Chloe walked in. Before the ring was resized. Before the cranberry dress was selected. It had all been taken care of. I looked across the table at Brandon. He had sat down in the chair that used to be my grandmother's chair. The one with the carved back. The one reserved for honored guests. He put his napkin in his lap. He did not look up. His wrist turned, once, toward the water glass. My mother raised her glass. To Chloe and Brandon, finally, the right pairing. My father lifted his glass half an inch off the tablecloth. Brandon never touched his wine. That was strange, because Brandon drinks Bordeaux even at breakfast if you offer it. He drank water. He kept drinking water. A man who was being told what to do, and when, and by whom. Aunt Evelyn watched me the entire meal. She did not speak much. She passed the rolls. She cut her own turkey into pieces too small to eat. At one point, while my mother was laughing at a joke Brandon didn't make, Aunt Evelyn tapped her spoon twice against her plate. I don't know if she meant it. I chose to believe she did. It sounded like Morse code for "I see you." I looked at my father 3 times during the meal. He was working his jaw. He was cutting the turkey the wrong way across the grain, which my father has never done in my life. His hand was shaking, not much. Enough for me. He knew, not all of it, but enough of it to break the way he held a knife. Chloe talked. She talked about a honeymoon trip she had not planned yet, to a country she had never visited, in a month when Brandon had an audit at work. She talked about wedding colors. She talked about a photographer in Raleigh who had a 6-month wait list but would squeeze them in. She did not mention me. She did not mention April. She did not mention the ring she was wearing. At one point, my mother put her hand on Chloe's forearm and said, in a tone I had never heard her use with me, "I'm so proud of you, baby." I set my fork down. I breathed. I picked the fork back up. The second dish came out, Brussels sprouts with bacon. My mother's recipe. I have hated that recipe since I was 14. She had not made it once in the 20 years since I moved out, and tonight she had made 2 pans of it. Brandon loves Brussels sprouts with bacon. She had cooked his favorite side dish for a dinner that was supposed to be a surprise. At 8:34, I stood up. I thanked my mother for the meal. I walked around the table and I kissed my father on the forehead and said quietly, "You okay?" He said, "I'm okay. Drive carefully." I said, "I will." Chloe said from across the table, "Denise, don't be a stranger." I did not look at her. I said, "I won't." I left it ambiguous on purpose. In the entry hall, reaching for my coat, I saw something my mother had not counted on. Hanging on the hook next to her camel wool was a black cashmere coat that was not mine, not hers, not Chloe's, and not Aunt Evelyn's. A woman's coat, size small, Charlotte dry cleaner tag still stapled inside the sleeve. I lifted the tag with 2 fingers. The name on it was Whitaker, Catherine Whitaker, Brandon's mother. She had been here earlier today, before I arrived, before Chloe arrived. While my mother was pretending the doorbell was a surprise, I put my coat on. I walked out the front door. I did not slam it. I closed it the way you close a courtroom door. Quietly, on purpose, in a way that says I'm coming back. By the time I reached my car, I had stopped being the woman who lost the man. I had become the woman who would find out how. The drive home was 34 minutes. I did not turn on music. I did not call anyone. Aunt Evelyn called me 3 times between Providence and Park Road. I sent her to voicemail, not because I didn't want to talk to her, because I did not want to hear one kind sentence until I had counted everything. Kindness would break me before I was ready. I drove with both hands on the wheel. I drove the speed limit. I did not run a single yellow. I have a rule from law school from a professor who said it once and never again. When you are angry, do everything by the book. Angry people get pulled over. Angry people leave paper trails. I was not leaving a paper trail tonight. In my head, I made a list. 8 plates, warmed plate. My mother's navy blazer, the one she wore the day she told my cousin she was cutting her from the will 10 years ago. Bordeaux opened at 4. Chloe in the cranberry dress. The ring with my satellite diamonds. Brandon drinking water. My father's shaking hand. Aunt Evelyn's shake of the head. Brussels sprouts with bacon. Catherine Whitaker's coat in my mother's entryway on a day Catherine Whitaker was not invited to my family's dinner. Somewhere around Selwyn, I realized I was not crying. Somewhere around Park Road, I realized I was not going to cry. I had reached a place below crying, a place my mother had put me in without knowing, a place that was cooler and cleaner than grief. I pulled into my garage at 9:18. I sat with the engine off for a minute and a half. I listened to the ticking of the cooling engine. I listened to my own breathing. I listened to the low hum of the refrigerator through the wall. I took the key out of the ignition. I got out of the car. There was a package at my front door. Brown paper, my mother's cursive. She had mailed it, which meant she had sent it before Thanksgiving, which meant she had already known what she was going to do tonight when she had taken it to the post office. I brought it inside and set it on the counter without opening it for a long time. I poured water. I drank the water. I opened my laptop at 11:32. I didn't order the DNA test because I suspected the bloodline. I ordered it because of something Brandon said to me, casually, 2 summers ago, in a restaurant in Asheville after his second glass of wine. We were sitting on a patio. He had looked across the table at me, then at a framed photograph of my family on my phone, and he had laughed and said, "You and Chloe don't look like sisters at all. You look like your dad. She looks like, I don't know. She looks like somebody I've met, but I can't place it." I had laughed back. I had not asked the question that sentence was begging me to ask. I had told him he'd had too much Cabernet. I had moved on to talking about his mother's garden. For 2 years, that sentence sat in a folder in my head I never opened. Tonight, I opened it. 3 kits, express shipping. I entered the order at 11:52. 3, not 2. I did not yet know who the 3rd kit was for. My hands knew before my head did. Then I opened the package from my mother. Inside was a small leather box and a note card. The note said, "For you, so you remember her. Love, Mom." The box contained my grandmother's pearl necklace. The clasp was intact. The strand was intact. 1 pearl was missing, about 1/3 of the way down. I had seen that pearl tonight. It was in my sister's right earlobe. My mother had restrung my grandmother's pearls into earrings for Chloe, and then mailed me the rest as a consolation prize. She had known I would come home tonight, and she had known I would open this package at some point this week, and she had written "Love, Mom" on a card about a necklace she had already destroyed. I placed the note and the pearls in a drawer. I did not throw them away. Evidence is evidence, even when it is wrapped in velvet. I sat on the floor of my kitchen for 7 minutes. I did not sob. I breathed through my nose and I counted tile. There were 42 tiles between the stove and the refrigerator. I counted them twice. The counting was the only thing that kept my hands steady enough to type. At 1 in the morning, I got up. I opened a blank document. I titled it Thanksgiving Observations. I typed every detail I could remember in order. 8 plates, warmed plate, my mother's blazer, Bordeaux at 4, Chloe's dress, the ring, Brandon's water, my father's hand, Aunt Evelyn's shake of the head, Brussels sprouts, Catherine's coat, the missing pearl. I saved the document to 2 encrypted drives. I did not print it. Paper can be found. Encrypted drives can be subpoenaed, but not easily photographed. At 2:15, I went to bed. I did not sleep. I watched the ceiling. I waited for the worst of the night to pass. When the first light came through the blinds at 6:30, I got up, put on my work clothes, and drove to my office. It was Friday. Nobody was in. The building smelled like industrial lemon cleaner and stale coffee. I swiped my badge at the parking gate, the elevator, and the floor. 3 timestamps that would later prove I was at work when I said I was at work. I sat at my desk with a yellow legal pad, and I started with the only thing I knew for certain. My mother had orchestrated this, not reacted to it, orchestrated it. I wrote that sentence at the top of the pad and underlined it twice. Everything under that line was work. I used my father's Google account. I knew the password because I had set it up for him in 2019, and he had never changed it. He used the same password for everything, my birthday, reversed, with an exclamation point. My mother used the same account to manage family logistics because my father had never learned to navigate a shared drive. My mother shared a drive folder with him called Family Logistics. She had been sloppy. She had been sloppy the way people get sloppy when they have stopped believing anyone else in the family is paying attention. There were 11 emails between my mother and Catherine Whitaker, starting in early July and ending the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I read them in order. Some were polite, some were warmer than polite. The September 3rd email from my mother contained the line that stopped me dry. Catherine, Chloe is ready. Can Brandon stop pretending now? Ready for what? Pretending what? I scrolled. There was a September 12th restaurant bill attached to one of the threads. Roosters on College Street, Uptown, 4 entrees, 2 bottles of Bordeaux. Tip of $140. The card on file was Catherine Whitaker's. My mother was not paying for her own conspiracy. The Whitakers were. I read the September 3rd email 3 times. Each time a different word stood out. Ready, pretending. Now. Catherine had replied that same day. He is not ready. He loved her. You promised me 6 months. Give me 6. My mother had written back within the hour. He had 6. He had 8. I gave you every month you asked for. Denise gave him the ring back in April. It is November. Chloe cannot wait any longer. Chloe cannot wait any longer. For what? There was a folder inside the folder. I missed it on the first pass. My mother had named it innocuously, Family Dates. Inside Family Dates was a subfolder titled W Arrangement. It was locked. 2-factor on her phone, which I did not have. I called my cousin Tyler. Tyler is my Aunt Evelyn's son. He is 28, works information security at a bank downtown, and owes me exactly one favor because I kept his ex-girlfriend from getting half his condo 2 years ago. I said, Tyler, I need to get into something. I'm not going to tell you what. I need you to not ask me why. He said, Auntie Patricia? I said, yes. He said, I've been waiting for this call since I was 11. I said, why 11? He said, I'll tell you someday. Not today. It took him 11 minutes over the phone, walking me through an account recovery that my mother had not hardened. He stayed on the line while I clicked. He said, you're in. I'm hanging up. Don't send me anything from what's in there. I was never on the phone. Inside W Arrangement were 3 documents. The first was a family tree of the Whitakers, going back 4 generations, annotated in my mother's handwriting with small stars next to the names of the wealthy ones. The second was titled Chloe Talking Points. The third was titled Contingency if Denise Suspects. I opened the third one first. It was a 2-page memo, written in my mother's voice but polished in a way she could not have polished alone, detailing what to say if I showed up asking questions. There was a section on how to explain the ring, a section on how to explain the timing, a section on how to explain the apartment, and at the bottom, a single line in bold. If she brings up the will, redirect. If she brings up Savannah, end the conversation. Savannah. My mother had a page about Savannah, and it told her to stop talking the moment I said the word. The second document, Chloe Talking Points, was a rehearsal script. It had 3 versions of the sentence, "We're in love." The third version was highlighted. That was the one Chloe used. There were bullet points about body language. There was a line about looking at my mother first. There was a line about not looking at me. There were notes in the margin that I recognized as coaching language. Pause here, breathe here, smile before the key phrase. The language of a professional speech coach, not a mother. I pulled my parents' joint bank statements through the trust portal. I have access because I am my grandfather's secondary executor, and my mother routes some of his trust through that account. Over the previous 5 months, my mother had wired a total of $15,600 to Chloe. The memo line said things like styling, dental, gym, and in June, coaching. I searched coaching plus Chloe Jackson and found a testimonial on the website of a public speaking coach in South End. Grateful to my mother for preparing me for the hardest conversation of my life. Chloe J. My mother had paid a professional to teach my sister how to tell me, in a sentence, that she had taken my fiancé. I stopped for 10 minutes and drank a glass of water. I did not cry. Crying was not useful yet. I needed to understand one more thing before I allowed myself anything. I needed to understand why. The answer started coming into focus on the Saturday, in the reading room of my own office, when I pulled my grandfather's will out of the vault and read Clause 7.3 for the 4th time in my life. My grandfather, Harold Jackson, died in 2016. He left behind a trust valued at $2.3 million. He was, by every available account, a paranoid old man who trusted paper more than people. He had been cheated twice in business before he was 40, and he never trusted another human being's word again. Clause 7.3 read, assets flow per stirps to legitimate biological descendants verified at time of distribution. In the event of dispute, DNA verification shall be ordered by the executor. The executor of record was his attorney, Theodore Brennan, 71, retired, still alive, still answering his phone on the second ring. The secondary executor, with authority to act if Theodore chose not to, was me. I called Theodore on the Saturday afternoon. He picked up. I asked him if he remembered my grandfather's verification clause. He laughed a short, dry laugh. "Denise," he said, "your mother has asked me about that clause 3 times in the last year." I closed my eyes. I already knew what was coming, but I let him say it. She asked me first if the clause applied to step-grandchildren. She asked me second if the DNA test was mandatory at distribution or only if contested. She asked me third, and this is the one that troubled me. She asked if there was a way to waive the clause in the event of what she called an extended family technicality. I told her no. She called me a week later and asked if Chloe could be specifically excluded, phrased as though she were asking me a hypothetical about someone else's family. I said she wasn't protecting Chloe. She was looking for a loophole. Theodore said, "Denise, she wanted to know if Chloe could still inherit if Chloe were, as she put it, biologically connected to the family through a different route." There it was. My mother was not afraid of losing Chloe. My mother was terrified that when the will executed, the DNA clause would reveal what she had been hiding since before I was born, and she was shopping for a door she could walk Chloe through anyway. I said, "Theodore, if I order a verification under Clause 7.3, can you support the filing?" He said, "I've been waiting for that call since 2016. Come see me Monday." I sat at my desk long after the sun went down. The cleaners came through the floor and I waved them past my door. One of them, a woman named Rosa, who had cleaned my office every Saturday for 6 years, looked at me the way Aunt Evelyn had looked at me at the dinner table. She didn't say anything. She closed my door softly on her way out. Kind women recognize each other. It is the only useful thing I have learned for free. I wrote 6 steps on the yellow pad. I wrote them in order. I gave each one a date. I scanned the page, saved it to 2 encrypted drives, and burned the original in the sink in the office kitchen. There is no paper trail I did not control from that Saturday forward. I drove home with the radio off. I slept for the first time in 2 nights. I dreamed about the 8th plate. I dreamed it was still warm. The following Sunday I took my father to breakfast at the diner on Park Road, where he and I have eaten Eggs Benedict for 22 years. He arrived without his wedding ring. He had taken it off and left it in his truck. He did not tell me. I saw the pale band on his hand. He ordered the Benedict. I ordered pancakes I did not eat. We were halfway through coffee when I asked him quietly about my mother's trip to Savannah in 1991. He set his cup down. He did not pretend to think about it. 3 weeks, he said. She went to see your Aunt Doreen, she told me. Doreen was already dead. I knew that the day she left. I didn't ask. I said, Dad. He said, I'm not stupid, Denise. I was never stupid. I was quiet. That's not the same thing. We sat in a silence that was not uncomfortable. The waitress refilled our coffees without asking. My father had been coming to this diner long enough that the staff did not interrupt a serious face. He said without looking at me, Chloe was always different. You look like me. She looks like somebody I don't know. I used to think maybe my mother. I've stopped thinking that. Then he said the sentence that opened the door I needed. If you find anything at all, I want to know. I'm old enough to hear the truth now. I put my hand over his. His skin was thinner than it had been 5 years ago. The veins stood up from the back of his hand like a map of a river I had never walked. I said, Okay, Dad. He said, Your mother went to Savannah many times over the years. She always went alone. She came back with gifts that were too expensive for a 3-day trip. I didn't ask. Every time I didn't ask, I got smaller. I've been small for 30 years. I don't want to die small. He didn't cry. I didn't cry. That more than anything else told me how serious we both were. When the check came, he reached for it first. He always reached for it first. Today, I let him. I did not fight him for the bill the way I usually did. I let my father pay for breakfast like a man, because he needed to feel like one, and because I needed to let him. In the parking lot, he hugged me. He had not hugged me like that since I was a child. Tight, a full 2 seconds longer than a social hug. The kind of hug that was a contract. He said into the top of my head, Whatever you do it right. Don't rush it. Make it stick. I said, I will. In the car afterwards, my phone buzzed. The lab had confirmed receipt of the 3 samples. Expected results, 3 to 4 weeks. I had gotten my sample easily. I gave it myself. I took Chloe's from an old hairbrush in the guest bathroom at my parents' house. The bathroom Chloe still used when she stayed over. Still full of her drugstore things. I took my mother's from a coffee cup she had left at my apartment 2 weeks earlier, lipstick on the rim. I had saved the cup in a paper bag inside my freezer, not because I had known, but because my mother's lipstick had been a shade I didn't recognize. And I had wanted to Google it. I never Googled it. I used it. I did not send my father's sample. I did not want him to be an instrument. I wanted him to be a witness. Later, not yet. While I waited, I did not collapse. I tried 2 cases. I won one and settled the other. I hit my gym 3 mornings a week and ran the Greenway on weekends. I did not tell Nina Caldwell, my closest friend and a partner at a rival firm, anything more than, I'm in a long trial. Don't call me until January. Nina paused on the phone and said, Trial for the firm or for the family? I didn't answer. She said, Okay, I'm here. Tell me when. Nina always knew. She was the friend who had looked at my mother once at a dinner party 6 years ago and said quietly on the drive home, Your mother looks at you like she's grading you. I had laughed then. I was not laughing now. On December 20th, while I was in a deposition across town, Chloe posted her second engagement announcement on Instagram. Brandon on one knee, bigger stone, beach at Isle of Palms, caption, This time, forever. 136,000 followers liked the photo in the first hour. My father called me from the garage and left a voicemail that said, Only, I saw the post. I love you. I listened to it 4 times and saved it. On January 3rd, the lab emailed me. Unusual result on sample 2. Please resubmit for confirmation. The relationship probability falls outside expected range. Resubmission recommended for accuracy. I knew what unusual meant. Unusual meant the computer had done a first pass and produced a number the computer was not comfortable publishing without a second swab. I requested a second Chloe sample and went to my parents' house on a Saturday while my mother was at a hospital board luncheon. My father sat in the kitchen pretending to read the paper. I lifted one of Chloe's sweaters from the hall closet, the one with her initial embroidered on the hem. I bagged it. My father said without looking up. Bring it back clean. I said I would. He nodded once and turned the page of a newspaper he had been reading for an hour. On my way out, I stopped in the hallway. There was a framed photograph on the wall I had walked past 1,000 times without seeing. It was my mother at 30, holding me as an infant, on a porch I did not recognize. The porch was not ours. The porch was not Aunt Doreen's. Aunt Doreen was dead by then. I took a picture of the photograph with my phone and left. Late in January, my father met me at a storage unit on the edge of the county. The building was cinder block, the unit was climate-controlled, and the manager was a man my father had done business with for 40 years. We did not sign in. He had a cedar box under his arm. It had a combination lock he had cut with his own bolt cutters that morning. He had never, in 37 years of marriage, broken my mother's privacy. He had done it now. He handed me the box and said, "I don't know what's in it. I didn't look. That's for you." I said, "Dad, are you sure?" He said, "D, I have been sure for 27 years." I opened the box on a folding table under a bare bulb. My father stood on the other side of the table with his hands in his jacket pockets. He did not sit down. In the box were 43 photographs, 7 handwritten letters, and 1 hotel receipt. The photograph on the top of the stack was my mother's 31st birthday, 1992. I was 2 years old in the frame, strapped to her hip in a lavender dress. Beside her, with his arm around her waist, was a man I had never seen at any family event. Tall, dark hair. He wore the same watch Brandon wore now, the watch Brandon had inherited from his father when his father died in 2019. On the back of the photograph, my mother had written, in pencil, "G, happy birthday to me, 1992. I found G in the other photographs too. 1993, 1994, 1996, 1998. Each one a little older. Each one a little happier. Each one hers." In the 1996 photograph, my mother was wearing a dress I remembered from a Christmas card. In the 1998 photograph, she was pregnant. The hotel receipt was in her handwriting, transferred to the margin. The Marshall House, Savannah. June 16th through 19th, 1998. Suite 214. 2 guests. Mr. and Mrs. G. Whitaker. Paid in cash. Chloe was born. March 3rd, 1999. I did the math once, and I did not do it again. The 7 letters were held together with a rubber band that broke when I touched it. 4 were love letters. 2 were arguments. The 7th letter was a letter Gregory Whitaker had written to my mother, undated, in his own handwriting, never sent, folded 3 times, still crisp. "Patty, Catherine is starting to suspect. I cannot keep doing this unless you tell Raymond the truth. The girl deserves to know who her father is. If you will not tell her, I will have to tell her myself one day, before I am too old or too dead. G. Gregory Whitaker, Brandon's father." I looked up from the letter. My father was staring at a neutral point in the ceiling of the storage unit. He said softly, "I saw the first photograph yesterday. I did not need to see any of the others." I said, "Dad." He said, "Keep going." I read each letter out loud because he asked me to. He did not flinch. He did not cry. When I finished the last one, he said, "Put them back exactly the way they were. Close the box. Take it with you. I do not want it in this building." I said, "Okay." He said, "D, do not tell me what you find next. Tell me only when you are ready to do something about it. I don't want to be carrying something I cannot put down." I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm going to go sit in my truck for a minute." He walked out, and I stood in the bare bulb light of a storage unit in the middle of January, holding my mother's life, and I finished the job. On March 22nd, a Saturday, at 10:16 in the morning, the lab sent the final report. Subject line: "Final results ready. 14-page report attached. Please contact our genetic counselor to discuss. Counselor's note: relationships require interpretation." I did not open it for 4 hours. I answered 2 emails for a client in Raleigh. I ate a sandwich I had packed the night before. I put half of the sandwich back in the refrigerator with 2 bites left because I knew I would need something to come back to when I was finished. At 2:30, I opened the report, 14 pages. Page 7, Denise Jackson and Raymond Jackson, parent and child match. Confidence 99.99%. I exhaled. I had not realized I was holding my breath for that one. I was still his daughter. The ground under me did not disappear. My father was still my father. The one fixed point in the diagram remained fixed. Page 9. Chloe Jackson and Raymond Jackson. No match. Excluded as biological parent. I nodded. I did not react. I had known this since breakfast at the diner. The report only confirmed what my father had told me with his hands. Page 11. Chloe Jackson and Gregory Whitaker, deceased. In the Ancestry database since 2017. Parent and child match. Confidence 99.97%. I set the page down. I picked it up again. I read the line twice. Page 13. The line I had not prepared myself for. Chloe Jackson shares 25% DNA with Brandon Whitaker. Half-sibling relationship confirmed. The lab had cross-referenced. Brandon had done a recreational kit in 2018, back when everyone was doing them. It sat in the same database. The algorithm had made the match the moment Chloe's sample landed. The report flagged it automatically. A computer had seen what my mother had spent 27 years hiding, and the computer had not blinked. I sat very still for 17 minutes. I did not call anyone. I did not stand up. I did not cry. My mother had arranged my sister's marriage to my sister's own half-brother. My mother had known. My mother had rehearsed my sister to announce it at my family's Thanksgiving. My mother had warmed the plate. 17 minutes. I watched the second hand on the clock on the opposite wall. I watched the minute hand move 3 times. Somewhere in the 17 minutes, I realized that my mother was a stranger and had always been a stranger, and that the only thing I had lost in that dining room on Thanksgiving was the version of her I had been carrying around since I was a child. I printed 3 copies of the report. One went into the vault at my office, one went into a safety deposit box at a branch I had opened the week before, and one I mailed to myself by certified post to a P.O. box I had rented specifically for the timestamp. Chain of custody. Paper, signed, stamped, dated, legally admissible. Then I opened my phone and I saved a new contact. I did not call. I did not text. I saved the number as CW, and I put the phone face down on the desk. I ate the rest of the sandwich. It was dry. I ate it anyway. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the yellow pad. I wrote 6 steps. I gave each one a date. Step 1, meet Theodore, this week. Step 2, meet Catherine Whitaker, first week of May. Step 3, confirm Brandon's DNA match through Catherine's independent test, week 3 of May. Step 4, prepare the will contest filing under Clause 7.3. File when ready. Step 5, Christmas Eve reveal at my parents' house, December 20th. Step 6, post-reveal legal actions, January. I scanned the page. I saved it to 2 drives. I burned the original in the sink. No paper trail I did not control. I retained 2 attorneys, Theodore for the will, a woman I had known on the Charlotte Bar Association board, Harriet Donovan, 45, specialist in fraud and misrepresentation, for the rest of it. I paid both from my personal account, not the firm. Harriet read the DNA report, the letters, the drive screenshots, and the bank statements in one sitting without speaking. When she finished, she put the file down and said, "Your mother will not survive this socially. Do you want to destroy her, or do you want to give her room to destroy herself?" I said, "Self-destruction is cheaper." She smiled without humor. "It's also heavier. You'll carry a piece of her collapse whether or not you push her. Make sure you know which piece you're choosing," I said. "The piece where she does it in front of everyone who watched her set the extra plate." Harriet nodded once and closed the file. "Then we build it so she walks to it herself. My job is to make sure the floor does not give out under you on the way." Late April, I wrote Catherine Whitaker a 4-line email. I told her I had information about Gregory that concerned both our families. I told her I would be at Roosters, uptown, May 2nd, 1 o'clock, alone. 11 minutes later, she wrote back, "I'll be there. I've waited 30 years. Before I could meet Catherine, my mother called me. It was the first call from her in 4 months. Her voice was rehearsed warm. "Sweetheart, Christmas is at the house this year. Chloe wants to do an engagement party at home. The whole family," I said. "Of course I'll come, Mom. I'll bring the pecan pie." She breathed out. I heard it. I heard her believe me. She said, "That will be perfect. I said, "Yes." After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long minute. I had never lied to my mother in a tone that clean. I understood in that minute that I had inherited something from her after all. I just planned to use it on her. On May 2nd, I got to Rooster's 15 minutes early. I chose the corner booth because it had 2 exits and a bad sightline from the bar. Catherine arrived exactly on time. She was 61, a widow, in a black blazer and no jewelry. She ordered water. So did I. She sat down across from me, and she was quiet for 8 seconds before she said, "I rehearsed this speech for 30 years. I don't remember a word of it." I said, "I have mine. I'll go first." I placed the 14-page report on the table. I did not open it. I did not need to. She looked at the envelope and she did not touch it. She said, "I have known Chloe was Gregory's daughter since she was 2 years old. I found one of her baby photographs in his briefcase. He had carried it with him." I said nothing. That is my sin. I did not speak. She reached into her bag and took out a stack of folded letters, tied with a ribbon. "Gregory wrote your mother 17 letters he never sent. I found them after he died. In a locked drawer I had to have a locksmith open because he did not leave me the key. The last one was written 2 weeks before his stroke. It says, 'Tell the girl, I'm running out of time.' He tried to be a better man than he was. He ran out of time before he figured out how." I looked at the ribbon. I did not untie it. She said, "I tested Brandon. I lifted a coffee cup from his apartment 3 weeks ago. I had the sample run independently. The lab matched him to Chloe as half-siblings." Her voice did not break, but her hand, wrapped around the water glass, went white at the knuckles. "My son has been sleeping with his own sister. I knew enough to stop it. I did not stop it in time. That is also my sin." I said, "Why did you come today?" She said, "Because you have what I never had. You have the courage to say it out loud. I will sign any statement you need. I will sit at any table you put me at. I will testify to anything that is true." I said, "There is one table I need you to sit at." She said, "Tell me when." I said, "December 20th. She said, "Where?" I said, "My parents' dining room." She said, "I'll bring the wine." We did not laugh, but something loosened between us. She slid an envelope across the table. Cream paper, sealed. My name written on it in a man's handwriting. "This is Gregory's personal addendum. It was filed in 1999, before Chloe was even named. $600,000 is set aside for, and I quote, 'my daughter, if she is ever acknowledged.' It comes with a condition. She must contact her biological mother to forgive or refuse within 12 months of acknowledgement." He thought it would force her to say his name out loud. He was naive. I said, "I'll make sure she knows." Catherine said one more thing before she left. She stood up, looked down at me, and said, "He did not want this, but you are doing what he didn't have the courage to do. Don't forget that when you're lying awake afterward." We did not hug. We did not shake hands longer than 1 second. She put on her coat, the same black cashmere coat I had found in my mother's foyer on Thanksgiving, and she walked out into the sun. I sat in the booth for a minute after she was gone. I drank the rest of my water. I slid Gregory's envelope into my bag. I signaled the waiter and paid the bill in cash, with a tip that would be forgotten by tomorrow. Between May and December, I built the rest of it. Harriet drafted the motion under Clause 7.3. Theodore reviewed and signed. The filing sat in my vault, unexecuted, waiting for the date I had given it. I spoke to my father twice a month in person, never by phone. I spoke to Aunt Evelyn on Sundays. I did not see Chloe. I did not see my mother. I did not see Brandon. I was a woman preparing a room. December 20th arrived dressed as Christmas. My mother had set the table in red and gold. There were 9 places. She did not know she had invited 9. She thought she had invited 8. The 9th was a secret I was carrying. I arrived at 6 o'clock in the same blue dress I had worn the Thanksgiving before. Same dress, same house, same table. Symmetry was a tool. I handed my mother the pecan pie at the door. She kissed me longer than usual. She was testing me. I let her. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thank you, Mom." "Is everything? Are you okay?" It was the first time she had asked me that question in a year. She asked because she needed me to say yes. I said, "I'm great, Mom. It smells wonderful in here." She exhaled. Relief. She was relieved. I filed that away too. In the living room, Chloe was in a silver dress, her third engagement ring on her finger, the stone almost absurd. Brandon stood beside her with the eyes of a man who had been standing in one place for a year and was too tired to move. Chloe hugged me performatively. I hugged her back by exactly the required amount. Denise, I'm so glad you came. I wouldn't miss it. She looked at my face for any sign of what I knew. I gave her nothing. I had practiced. My father stood by the fireplace in the suit he had worn to his mother's funeral. He caught my eye across the room and nodded once. Aunt Evelyn was on the couch, in a green dress, drinking something that was not wine. She had asked me the week before what I needed from her tonight. I had told her I needed her to be a witness. That was all. At 6:45, the doorbell rang. I stood up before my mother did. I walked to the door. I opened it. Mom, I said over my shoulder, I invited someone. I think everyone will want to know her. Catherine Whitaker stepped into the foyer. My mother's face emptied of color in one long second. I have never, before or since, seen a human face do what my mother's face did. It was not surprise. It was recognition. The recognition of a woman who has been outrun. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Brandon stood up. He said, Mom, what are you doing here? Catherine said, Your sister asked me to come. Brandon said, My sister. Catherine looked at Chloe. She did not answer him. Not yet. Not in this room. She was waiting for me. My mother found her voice. Catherine, I didn't know you were... Catherine said, Denise invited me. I think it's time. My mother turned to me, and for the first time in her life, her eyes were afraid of me. She had looked at me disappointed. She had looked at me critical. She had looked at me bored. She had never, in 32 years, looked at me afraid. I took Catherine's coat and hung it on the hook where my mother had hung it in September. Symmetry. Dinner was served. I asked Chloe about her engagement party plans. I asked my mother if she had adjusted the turkey recipe. I complimented her on the gravy. I drank one sip of the Bordeaux and set the glass down. I did not speak much for 45 minutes. I let them talk. I let my mother fill the silence with the sound of her own voice, because I knew silence was coming, and I wanted her to remember that she had had these 45 minutes to speak while she still could. Chloe talked about the engagement party. She talked about flowers. She talked about a photographer in Raleigh, the same one. She did not look at Catherine. Catherine did not look at her. Aunt Evelyn did not say a word. She ate slowly. She passed the rolls. She caught my eye once across the table. I nodded once. My father cut the turkey. He cut it the right way tonight. Across the grain, his hand did not shake. When the main course was cleared, before dessert, I placed a sealed manila envelope in the center of the table, next to the gravy boat. Red wax seal. 9 people looked at it. My mother said, Denise, honey, we don't need to. I said quietly, Mom, I'm not asking you. I opened the envelope. I lifted out the 14-page report. I did not read it all. I read 4 sentences. Sentence 1. Raymond Jackson is my biological father. My father's hand went flat on the table. His eyes closed for 1 second. When they opened, they were steady. Sentence 2. Raymond Jackson is not Chloe's biological father. Chloe's face did not understand yet. Brandon's face started to. I saw him reach for the edge of the table with his right hand. I saw his fingers find it and grip. Sentence 3. Gregory Whitaker is Chloe's biological father. Catherine closed her eyes. My mother made a small sound, almost a hum, the sound a person makes when they are hit in the stomach and cannot yet form a word. Sentence 4. Brandon and Chloe are half-siblings. The DNA match is 99.97%. The room stopped for 4 seconds. Chloe made a small sound, not a word. She stood up. She knocked her chair back against the wall. She ran. I heard the bathroom door slam. I heard the lock turn. Brandon stared at his mother as though he had never seen her. Catherine looked at him and said, I knew, son. I'm sorry. I was a coward. Brandon stood up. He did not say anything. He walked out the front door in his socks. He did not come back that night. His shoes are still, as far as I know, under that dining room table. My mother stood up slowly. Her hand was trembling. I will say this plainly. She did not look at me. She did not look at my father. She did not look at the bathroom where Chloe was breaking. She looked at Catherine, and she said in a voice I had never heard her use, "Catherine, Catherine, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry." My father set his napkin down. The napkin landed perfectly folded. "Patty," he said. She did not turn. "Patty," he said again, a little louder. "I have been waiting 27 years to hear you apologize to someone. You apologized to the wrong person." My mother turned slowly. Her mouth opened. She said, "Raymond," he said. "No." One word. He said it the way a judge says overruled. She closed her mouth. He stood up. He walked into the foyer. He took his coat from the hook. He took the spare key to his truck from the small brass dish, where my mother had kept it for 37 years. He did not slam the door. He closed it softly, the way a man closes the door of a house he will not live in again. Aunt Evelyn rose from her chair. She walked to my side. She put her hand on my shoulder. She did not say a word. That was her whole speech. I looked at my mother and I said, "Mom, thank you for the dinner." I picked up my envelope. I picked up my purse. I kissed Aunt Evelyn on the cheek. I looked at Catherine. Catherine nodded once. I left the pie. Chloe and Brandon ended in 72 hours. Her Instagram went private within a week. She lost 43,000 followers before she locked the account. She sent me one text that said, "Why didn't Mom tell me?" She did not apologize. She did not ask how I was. I did not answer. I thought about that text for a long time. Chloe had been raised to believe she was the sun, and the sun does not say sorry for shining. She had asked the one question that told me she would never understand what she had done to me, only what had been done to her. I felt a grief for her I had not expected. She was a victim, too. She was not my victim. She was my mother's. Theodore filed the will motion the day after Christmas. My mother did not contest it. She couldn't. The DNA established the clause. On December 27th, Chloe was removed as a beneficiary. $1.1 million came back into the trust. I asked the court to redirect every dollar into a scholarship fund in my grandfather's name for first-generation law students at his alma mater in Virginia. I did not touch it. Theodore called me after the filing cleared. He said, "Denise, your grandfather would have shaken your hand," I said. He didn't shake hands. He nodded. Theodore laughed for the first time in a year. My father filed for separation on December 28th. My mother did not contest that either. He moved into a one-bedroom apartment 3 blocks from where I would move in the spring. He brought 3 boxes: clothes, books, a shoebox of photographs of me as a child. He left his wedding ring in a dish on the kitchen counter of the house on Providence Road. He did not take it with him. He did not throw it away. He left it where my mother would find it. Catherine executed Gregory's addendum. Chloe was notified of the $600,000 and the condition. She refused it. It was the first principled thing I had ever watched her do. I do not know if she did it because she meant it or because she was angry at my mother. I decided not to know. Some choices belong only to the person who makes them. My mother sold the house on Providence Road in 4 months. She took the first offer, below market. She moved to a 1-bedroom in Mint Hill. She resigned from 2 women's boards before they could ask her to. She lost the people she had called friends for 30 years in a single winter. I am told she goes to church on Sundays and leaves before the coffee. She wrote me a letter in late November before the Christmas reveal that arrived in my mailbox the Monday after. 7 pages. Handwritten in the cursive she had used to sign my school permission slips. It began, "Denise, if there is ever a day you want to hear my version, I will tell you everything, without excuses. I know it is late." I did not answer it. I did not throw it away. I put it in a drawer in a file where I could find it if I ever changed my mind. I have not changed my mind. Aunt Evelyn called me the week after Christmas. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "You're the first person to ask me that in a year." She said, "I've been asking in my head every day. I should have asked out loud." "I'm sorry it took a dinner to give me the courage." I said, "You tapped your spoon twice. You knew." She was quiet. Then she said, "I knew for 30 years. I saw your mother in a hotel lobby in Savannah in 1996 with a man who was not your father, and I drove home and I said nothing to anyone. That is my sin." I said, Then you and Catherine have something in common, she said. I know, we talked last week. We are going to have lunch every month now. We are going to be the kind of old women who tell the truth. We are 30 years late. I laughed for the first time in what felt like a season, and she laughed back. In the middle of January, I gave notice at my firm. I did not explain. I opened a small practice in Noda, 2 rooms above a coffee shop, and I had the painter put my name on the glass, Jackson Estate and Family Law. My first client was a 41-year-old woman from Raleigh, whose mother had been quietly rewriting a will to cut her out. I read the draft. I found the loopholes, I watched her cry, and I handed her tissues, and I did not tell her that her story was mine. I only told her that I believed her. That was enough. It is always enough. On Christmas Eve, a year after that Thanksgiving, I hosted dinner in my new house in Noda. There were 3 plates: my father, my Aunt Evelyn, me. My father had moved into an apartment 3 blocks away. He walked over in the snow. He rang my bell, and when I opened the door, he was holding a small bouquet of white flowers and the shoebox of photographs. He said, "I thought you should have these. You are a funny-looking baby," I laughed. He laughed. It was the first time I had heard him laugh like that in 10 years. Aunt Evelyn brought a bottle of wine and no makeup. She said, laughing, "This is the first Christmas in 20 years I've eaten without lipstick." She had brought a dish of her mother's, my grandmother's, green beans with toasted almonds. She set the dish on the table next to the pecan pie. 3 plates, 3 dishes from 3 women's hands. Nobody had warmed a plate in advance. Nobody had been coached. My father cut the turkey the right way across the grain. His hand did not shake. He cut 3 portions and passed them, 1 plate at a time. He sat at the head of the table because I had put him there. He looked at the chair and he looked at me and he said, "Dee, are you sure?" I said, "Sit, Dad." He sat. We made the pecan pie together from my grandmother's recipe. We used her measuring cups. We used her wooden spoon. My mother was nowhere in that kitchen. And for the first time, I understood that my grandmother had been a woman too, and that she had raised a daughter who became my mother, and that the recipe was the part of my grandmother that my mother had not been able to ruin. After dinner, my father set his coffee down. He said, "Dee, I want to say something." I said, "Okay." He said, "I didn't protect you enough. I was quiet too long. I knew something was wrong when you were a little girl. I knew it when I saw your sister's face in the hospital. I told myself that silence was the price of the family staying together. That was not love. That was cowardice. I am sorry." I put my hand over his. I said, "You are still my father." He said, "I never needed a piece of paper to know that." Aunt Evelyn did not speak. She wiped her eyes once with her napkin, and then she poured more wine. Catherine Whitaker sent me a message on my phone just after midnight. She had spent Christmas with Brandon, who had moved back into her house and was slowly learning how to breathe again. Her message said, "He did not want this, but you did what he could not. He would thank you if he could." I texted back 2 words, "Thank you." I turned off my phone. I stood at the window of my new house. It had started to snow, the rare, light kind that happens in Charlotte. Maybe once a winter. The Noda streetlights caught the flakes. Somewhere down the block, a neighbor had hung too many Christmas lights on too small a porch, and they flickered the way cheap lights flicker, and I loved them. I thought about the Thanksgiving table, the 8 plates, the warmed plate, the cranberry dress, the ring with my satellite diamonds, the wine my mother had been breathing since 4, the line from my mother's voice, "You're home." She had said it to my sister. She had not said it to me since I was 12 years old. This Christmas, I sat at my own table with my father and my aunt and 3 plates. Nobody set an extra plate for anyone. Nobody asked me if I was okay, because I had stopped needing to be asked. I had stopped measuring my life by who showed up and started measuring it by who sat down and stayed. My name is Denise Jackson. I am 33 years old now. I am a contract attorney and the daughter of Raymond Jackson, and the founder of a small law practice in a neighborhood my mother has never visited. Last Thanksgiving, my sister walked into my parents' dining room holding the hand of the man I was going to marry, and my mother set an extra plate, and no one asked if I was okay. This Christmas, I asked myself the question nobody asked me. I waited for the answer the way you wait for evidence to come back from a lab. I am okay. I am finally okay. I turned off the light in the kitchen. I locked the front door. I walked up the stairs of the first house I had ever bought alone, and I went to bed in the quiet, and I slept.